Welcome in, everybody who's joining us live on YouTube and Periscope, as well as everybody listening to this podcast via Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whichever platform you listen on live. This is the Fantasy Playmakers podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy. You can find me on Twitter at PopesFFH, where I'm kind of just continuing working through some rookie threads. I have some mock drafts and some articles up at Yards Per. I also am going to be appearing hopefully on Dynasty Dorks on Wednesday at 6 p.m. with Mike Florio and possibly the Smash Accept podcast as well that night. Also, I got to give a shout out to at Matty Big Chest for the overlay that he made for us. It's pretty killer. But let's talk about this, Ryan. I'm pretty excited to just dive in here. I think we got a pretty good episode. I'm excited to talk about these free agent class that's coming in here into 2021. And I just think that it's going to be fun to just kind of almost rank them, giving our best landing spots that we think would help their stock rise. How about you? How do you feel about this episode?
I'm excited, man. We're only 2 weeks away from start of free agency, so I think now is a good time to kind of get to talk about these guys a little bit before the pro days and all that stuff take over. So, I'm just excited to get talking about it.
Nice. Where can everybody find you for the people listening?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at MackeyFFB, or Mackey_FFB. I actually had 2 Dynasty startups over the last week that we had to do, or since our last podcast. That was a lot of fun. I'm not a huge fan of slow drafts, though. I realized me and a bunch of my buddies were talking about it, and we were kind of trying to get to that point where we could do just one big draft all in one night, but having different people around the country and different areas of the country was just really hard, different work schedules, things like that. So we did slow drafts, and it took about – it was like 3 – it took the full week to do 2 drafts. So it was kind of hard to do it, but we got through
That's
it.
That's pretty good time, honestly. I mean, I went through some slow drafts that took like 3 weeks to finish one. So.
Oh wow, yeah, that'd be nuts. That'd be crazy. I don't even know if I could be in the mood for that long a draft like that. Like I can at this beginning, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. But yeah, by like the round 15, 16, getting to 20, I'm like, oh man, like I'm about to start entering a queue and just going to auto draft at that point. But I issued some polls on my Twitter for some of my dynasty leagues, and got some really, really horrible trades. Like me and you were talking before the show, and but I did make one trade. One trade got so that the premise of the trades was that if somebody could offer me anything they wanted, any player, and I would have to, if their side of the trade won the vote, I would have to take it. So about a dozen or so trades in the 4 dynasty leagues that I'm in, and the only trade that went through was Amari Cooper and Chris Carson for DK. So I lost DK, but got Amari Cooper and Carson, which I kind of heard in that backs in that one league, so it wasn't horrible. And if Russell ends up getting traded, then kind of works out in my favor, to be honest with you, because I think DK drops out of the top 10 in Dynasty if that happens. So other than that, I know I reached out to the Devy space of Twitter. I know you were kind of interacting with that tweet as well, about possibly trying to get into the Devy space and trying to just kind of get our feet wet in that type of league. I had a really good conversation with the diva Devy, Katie Flowers at FF_Scholar399. She's great. If anybody's trying to get into Devy space or anything like that, she's great. She talked to me a lot about different ways to get into it, a lot of different databases and things like that to follow. So if anybody's trying to get into that, by all means, she's very open, very willing to talk to people. She's very knowledgeable. I've heard her on a bunch of podcasts. So if anybody else wants to do that, I'd strongly suggest going and talking to her, or tagging her in a post or anything like that.
Yeah, I just got off of the Play to Win podcast which is at P2W Fantasy. I just got off that just a couple, literally under an hour ago, and we talked about that too. Like the Devy world is just so large, and it's something that if you're a dynasty player or even a redraft player, it's kind of just something good to knowledge to just kind of familiar yourself with, or even reach out and just try something new. I mean, like I said, I interacted in it too. I think it's something that I've played dynasty for a long time, and I watch college football, and I watch film. I watch everything and anything I can, or read articles on anything on college players coming or that year or years in the future, just because it's a valuable asset to have as a dynasty player. But I just have never played in the Devy League, and I just kind of think it could be something cool to just branch out into and at least give a shot and try. So I think it's definitely something interesting that you were reaching out for.
Oh yeah, I'm always trying to expand my knowledge about anything when it comes to fantasy. So Devy would be a huge place, because I wholeheartedly admit that I have never been good at analyzing things, especially since I never really got into it. I feel like I'm getting a little better now. I'm getting a little better at watching film and things like that. But if getting into the Devy space would definitely help with that. And you can see guys like Ray GQ and like I said, Skylar. She's great. Ray's great. So they're both very knowledgeable. People that are in the Devy space that I follow on Twitter are very knowledgeable. A lot of their takes usually hit for the most part, because they've been watching these guys for so long since out of high school. So I mean, it's kind of hard to miss on guys when you're watching them from the graduation of high school through the college ranks, things like that. So it's definitely something I'm interested in for sure in the future.
Yeah, for sure. And any interaction I've had with Devy players or anything, don't feel afraid to reach out. Honestly, anybody on Twitter. I mean, lately I think there's been a little bit of hostility on necessarily the Twitter sphere, but like every time I've had an interaction with people, and I try to do it the same way. I mean, reach out, DMs are open for me at least. I just think that the interaction's key. I think that's just the main part of it. I mean, we're all here, yes, to play to win, and like you want to win ultimately, but I think it's for most people it's a hobby, and I think that just be natural and just be yourself, and I think it'll create better interactions, and it's just going to open windows for you.
Oh, absolutely. And I think interaction is knowledge, and knowledge is power in the fantasy space. And I mean, even if it's one of those things where even if you don't necessarily agree with somebody's take, there's a reason why somebody has that take. So maybe you need to take a second look, or get a second set of eyes on what you're looking at or what they're looking at, and see, hey, maybe they're right. Because I've heard plenty of arguments for or against people that I have ranked in certain positions, and I'm like, oh yeah, actually that's a fair point. So maybe I should take another look at that. Or rookie profiles that I've been looking at that people are saying, hey, you should probably look at this or take a look at that, and it definitely helps. It definitely opens your eyes a little bit.
And surprisingly, everybody, I didn't pay him to do that, but that's going to be a perfect transition, I think, to our main meat of the show. I think we both sent ahead of the show our top 10 free agent ranks, more so. And I looked at the list, and it's honestly pretty different. I think outside of, I don't even know if we have, I think the only person we have is Kenny Galladay in the same spot.
Yep, our top three are the same guys, but in different order.
Yeah, and then honestly, you break down from that outside of the top five. I mean, I have 2 or 3 guys that he doesn't have, and he has the same. I think we'll probably start. What do you say, Ryan? Start 10th and come down. Why don't you start us off with your 10th ranked free agent of 2021 and where you would ideally like him to land?
Yeah, my number 10 would be Chris Carson, running back from Seattle. Probably not going to be brought back, even though he probably should be. I'm not sure that they have a better option, to be honest with you. I don't think Penny is the answer. I don't think they're in a position to really draft anybody. But as far as landing spots for Carson, I think he'd be great in Atlanta or the Jets scheme that they're bringing over now with the new coaching staff. I think he'd be a great guy to pair with whoever they're going to have at quarterback, even if it is Darnold, because Darnold, as far as I'm concerned, has never had a very stable running game. Even when Bell was there, he still wasn't as consistent as he should be. But then again, with Adam Gase gone, the whole thing could change. You never really know. Michael P. Ryan's still there. I don't think Frank Gore is going to be back with the Jets. So I think Carson would be a good spot, especially to help mentor P. Ryan a little bit. And the Falcons, obviously, with Arthur Smith going there, they definitely want a power type back, and Chris Carson, I think, would apply that on a relatively cheap contract for them.
Yeah, I think that's I can get behind that. I honestly, my 10th player is Will Fuller. You have a lot higher, but for a long time I was going back and forth between these two guys because I do like Chris Carson. I think he's a cheap option for teams, and you have some of these teams that are up against the cap that might be looking to add that guy. Like, I know that he's going to have links to Buffalo. Pittsburgh could be an option. Or like you said, I mean, Seattle could re-sign him if he goes unsigned for a while in free agency. I'm not really sure, like you said, what Seattle's going to do. I feel like they might bring in a rookie, or they might go after a different free agent running back. There's a lot of guys who are going to be, I guess, more cost-efficient kind of category outside of the guys that we're going to talk about here, like a Marlon Mack or somebody like that who you could see sign somewhere that's just going to be a little bit better of an option. And it's interesting that you bring up the Jets because I see that as a lot. And personally, me is going over the rookies. I find that as a favorable spot for one of these rookies to land. So if Carson lands there, I mean, that's really going to kind of diminish that landing spot for rookies. But yeah,
that was kind of my thing too. They if they did go out and sign a guy like Carson, they do have cap space, and then they wouldn't have to address the running back position in the draft. They could address one of their many holes that they have that they needed to address in the draft. So that was just another thing. Sorry to cut you off, but
yeah, I mean, for me, like I said, my 10th is Will Fuller, and honestly, I think his best spot is back in Houston. I think for me, he's only in the top 10 because of what he has produced this past season and the year before. I just think his injuries are a big concern for me, so I usually don't rank him really high. He's a person that I kind of avoid just due to – and, I mean, injuries are something that happens. I'm not holding it against him, but yet I am. However, I just think that he should land back in Houston. I think that's the best place for him to find that success. Like, I know you'll elaborate probably more on him as you have him higher ranked earlier on or later on here. So I'll just kind of give you the short version there. I'm going to go ahead. I'll jump to 9, where I have probably somebody who's a little bit more interesting to a lot of people. At 9, I have Jonnu Smith. I think he's an athletic tight end who hasn't necessarily had the best offensive fit. I think he fits well in the offense, but he's over-flooded by like the Corey Davis and the A.J. Browns, and it's mainly an offense that's ran through Derrick Henry. So for me, I would like to see Jonnu Smith land in a spot that's going to use him more as his athletic abilities will allow. And I think landing in, like, say, a place like New Orleans, who will, with Sean Payton, he's going to basically would be an upgrade to me than Jared Cook. I think he's more athletic. I think he could be used much better in a passing game. And I think if it's Jameis Winston as a quarterback there, if it's Drew Brees, either way, he could be a good safety blanket outside of Michael Thomas. Along with that, there's not many other wide receivers under contract, at least, that are proven NFL talents on the New Orleans Saints. So I think that could be a very good, almost second option in that offense. And for me, I think that's just a great fit for him. Ryan, who do you got at 9?
9 for me, and I took this purely based off of who I think is the most talented free agents. Mm-hmm. 9 for me is AB. And I think he needs to stay in Tampa. I actually think that's probably the only place that he is able to sign to at this point in his career. He didn't seem he definitely wasn't the AB of old throughout the regular season. He did show slight flashes throughout the playoffs, but I think another year with Arians, and especially if Godwin leaves, I know that pushes Tyler Johnson and Scotty Miller up a little bit, but Brady loves him. Brady, for whatever reason, him and AB just absolutely click. He's gotten AB to really take care of himself and keep himself out of trouble one way or another. I don't know what it is about Brady that AB has done that for, but even when he was in New England, the reason why New England released him was because of something that happened prior to signing him. So it wasn't even anything that he got in trouble for while he was with the Patriots. So for whatever reason, like I said, those two just really get along. They have great chemistry together, and he'd be great opposite of Evans and whoever they decide to put on the outside, whether it be Tyler or one of these other guys that they have, because their receiving core is still pretty deep. And if they bring the whole group back, I mean, they're kind of hard to stop with Evans and AB and Gronk, and especially if they tag Godwin. But if they don't tag Godwin, even without him, I think they're still a top 5 offense in the league.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I can see the reasoning behind liking AB. He's a guy that, to me, I think all the drama that happened with him is kind of just pushed me away from him. But I like that. Yeah. I agree. I think Tampa would be a good landing spot for him. Outside of that, like you said, I don't know really any. It needs to be somewhere that he's held accountable, and Brady's going to do that. But obviously, I don't know how I missed this earlier, but we have the same guy at 8. And honestly, I think we have the same landing spot. I think number 8 is Corey Davis for both of us, and we both picked Green Bay. And I think it's a good landing spot. I think for us, at least the way I look at it is that Corey Davis fits as a second fiddle for me. He was drafted high. He's not living up to his draft stock, but he's a very solid NFL receiver. And I think him being in Green Bay playing second fiddle necessarily to Devontae Adams and getting the ball thrown to him from Rodgers is just going to be almost his best location outside of Tennessee. And I think Green Bay's needy, and he's going to bring somewhat of a premium because he had a good year last year. But I think he'll be more in Green Bay's price range than, say, drafting a wide receiver or going after one of these bigger name guys like a Galladay or a Godwin. How do you feel as far as why you put him at 8, Ryan?
Well, I have him at 8. Like I said, I purely based off of talent-wise, I think the guys that I have ahead of him are more talented than he is overall. But Green Bay is a perfect landing spot for him because, like you said, he definitely is a second fiddle type of guy. But Green Bay is a perfect landing spot. I just don't know if he goes there. They have a lot of cap space issues to work through right now. I know they just restructured Bakhtiari's contract. I know they just released a linebacker, Kirksey, I think his name is, and they leased somebody else they freed up like $21 million, something like that. And they're still like 20 below the cap. They're like 40 million over the cap. So if they can make the numbers work, I'd love to see him go there because I think he's never had a pass first offense like Green Bay's probably going to be next year for the most part. He's always been in Tennessee, so.
This is a fantasy world, Ryan. We don't need to worry about cap space. All right. It's irrelevant. Okay. He's going to Green Bay. But anyways.
I would love it. I really would. I would be all in on Corey Davis if he was to go to Green Bay and pair with Rodgers and Devontae for sure.
So to rotate back here, my 7th I picked was Leonard Fournette, and actually my landing spot for him was Seattle. Like you said, if Seattle moves on from Chris Carson, they're going to want a similar style running back. Pete Carroll's always liked that smash mouth type running back. And aside from using draft capital, I think Leonard Fournette could be a pretty good option. He's still fairly young. I mean, he's got a lot of miles on him, but he showed this year that he still can perform at a fairly high level. And I think added into that offense in Seattle where I think he would be more utilized than he was in Tampa. I think that for me, he's a very good fit in Seattle. And I think for me, I put him here just because I think last year he showed that he still could almost viably be a nice RB2 on your roster as like a depth kind of guy. He might not be a start every week, but he's definitely going to be able to give you those weeks where he'll be an RB2 close to RB1 type numbers.
No, I can get behind Fournette. My only issue with him is that Tampa's line was so good this year. I think they might even have been the PFF's number one in offensive line grades. I'm not 100% sure on that, but their offensive line was just so good, and Seattle's is so bad. I mean, Russell's publicly said that their offensive line is not good enough, and it might not even be at fault of their own, because I've heard a lot of people say this, and I agree that Russell sometimes will break out of the pocket beforehand, so that might play into his sack rates and things like that. But overall, their offensive line isn't nearly as good as Tampa's. So unless he signs with someone with an offensive line at the same level as Tampa's, I think his stock takes a big hit. But Seattle would definitely be a good fit scheme wise for sure.
If you had to pick where you put him,
he could definitely be an RB2. He'd be a matchup dependent RB2. I think he would definitely You're not going to play him against the Rams unless you have to, and you're going to have to play them twice a year. And just he would have his weeks where he was a top 24 running back for sure, because he can catch the ball. He does still run hard. I mean, the playoffs he showed he runs very hard still. But he's just outside my top 10 for me. I think I had him at like 11 or 12. He was kind of on that borderline top 10 guy.
Oh, I can see that. Your number 7 is honestly someone that I'm not too high on, so I'm going to actually kind of listen to you here and see what you have to say to see if I'm the one who's wrong. So why don't you tell us who your 7th is?
I have Curtis Samuel at number 7, and the reason why I like him, and I like him going to New England, because they need a playmaker. They need somebody. I really don't want him to go to New England because he is a playmaker, and I'm a Bills fan, and they can suck for a few years. But he's one of those guys that just has the skill set that matches the current NFL right now. He can catch. I should have looked it up. I thought I was sure, but I'm not 100% sure. I want to say he played some running back in college. So he's able to take handoffs and take those end arounds and things like that. He actually had one of the highest graded separation grades in the league for somebody who did not have a 100-yard game. Like Bridgewater was either missing him on the read or missing him just on his throws entirely. And he also had to compete with targets with Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore and McCaffrey when he was in there, and they're still kind of like a hybrid style offense with a bad quarterback. So it was kind of hard for him to get touches in that offense. And with McCaffrey coming back at full strength, it's going to be even harder. So if he could go somewhere where he could actually make use of his talents, and I think Josh McDaniels would definitely be able to make plays for him to be a very viable starting wide receiver. Probably definitely not a wide receiver 1, I don't think. I think there's too many good wide receivers for him to be a wide receiver 1, but he could be a wide receiver 2, very high-end wide receiver 3 type guy for New England if they were to sign him, or for any team. I've heard him going to Washington. I'm not sure if I like that yet as of right now, just strictly because of the quarterback situation. But as a player, I do like Samuel a lot. He's very fast. Obviously, I think everybody knows that. So
yeah, I
would like to see him in a more ball dominant position, whether it be a wide receiver 1 or a 2, as opposed to the 4th or 5th option that he has been.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, Curtis Samuel's always just kind of underlived his expectations. I think this year he kind of had his breakout party, and it's tough for me going into like a free agent year. Like, it's his contract year. Was it just he was trying a little harder because it's his contract year, or is this something that's a good trend that we're going to see him be able to repeat? For me, I just don't see him producing much more than a wide receiver 3 finish on the year. I think you'll have weeks where he does, kind of like you said, push into the wide receiver 2s. But I think he's going to be, depending on that landing spot, he's going to be a hard start for me, just on that fact of how consistent will he be. And I think, honestly, he could be a good buy, like you had brought him up. And I think if people have the same feelings I do, where he's just kind of like a meh type player, you might be able to get him pretty cheap. And I think if like you said, if he lands in a spot that he's more of that second to third option, you could end up with a really good buy low target.
Yeah, and I do want to throw in there that if he doesn't go to New England, I would like to see them add another weapon. I don't want him to go be the number one guy. Like I don't think he's the Allen Robinson, Kenny G type of free agent that's out there where he can go and be a number one somewhere. I would definitely want them to add somebody to have him kind of be the basically like the Corey Davis. Like I want him to be the second option, but I want him to be the first option for sure.
Would you like him in Green Bay? What if they don't sign Davis? Do you think he's a cheaper option?
I would definitely say he's cheaper. I feel like Davis is definitely going to want a bigger contract. But yeah, I could see him in Green Bay. That was probably actually that is one of the teams that I kind of went back and forth with between them and New England and Washington. But like I said, Washington is just kind of one of those things where I don't know the quarterback situation. I don't really know what they're going to do with him. So, but he does have Ron Rivera ties. So maybe Rivera knows how to use them a little bit more than these other guys do.
Nice. I think speaking of New England, we'll stay in the AFC East. You're sixth. There's somebody that you actually have on here that you want to see the Bills sign. Who's that?
That would be Aaron Jones. And that is strictly a personal preference. That is something that I don't think just the way Buffalo has been with their cap, I don't see them going and spending big money on a free agent running back. That's just not how they've operated. They've drafted running backs the last 2 years who they apparently seem to like a lot. Every report that I've seen has said that they like Moss and they like Singletary. So I don't see them going and signing Jones to a $10, $12, $13 million a year deal. And I don't think he's going to want a 1 year, $12 million deal. I think he's going to want a multi-year deal. And Buffalo just doesn't work like that. At least they haven't. Their history has shown that they don't work like that. I mean, they've let multiple talented running backs go in their history. So I just don't see that changing. And we have a couple different holes that we need some offensive line help and definitely need some run defense help. So I'd rather them spend the cap on that. But just his play style, I think, would fit beautifully in Buffalo with Josh and Stephon Diggs and really give us like a balanced attack because teams obviously know right now that we're not looking to run the ball. Josh Allen's going to throw the ball 40 times a game, and that's just the way it is. But
yeah, I think your second option too. I mean, for me, I had Aaron Jones as well on this list, not at 6. I was a little higher on him. He's my 4th player, but I think we both had you had it as your second option. But for me, I think Atlanta's a good fit for him. I think he'll be able to go in there. He'll be able to either take that lead back role because there's nobody going to be there, or they could add somebody and he could work in like a committee like he has his whole career. And I believe in Aaron Jones. We actually had talked about it earlier today, and he's been a top 5 running back for the last 2 seasons. And I think no matter where he goes, he's just so talented that you shouldn't have to worry about it. I think Aaron Jones should be a guy you're trying to maybe buy low. Not that he's necessarily super low. You're still going to have to pay up for Aaron Jones. But right now people are like down on him because he's leaving Green Bay. So I would definitely take a stab at the owner who has Aaron Jones and see if you can get him fairly cheap.
Yeah, and those startups I just finished up here. Jones went in the 7th and 8th round in both of those.
That's crazy. You're gonna, and he's possibly top 5 running back, and you're getting him that late. That's good value.
And say he does go to Atlanta, I could definitely see, like you said, he's been in a committee that his entire career. I don't think there's ever been a time where he was just the guy in the backfield where he was just by himself. And Atlanta could definitely bring Gurley back on a cheaper deal and let those two have their go at it have those two go back and forth just to kind of give Gurley a rest and still let Jones be in that committee. But I know a lot of people in the fantasy world probably don't want to see that because they want Jones to be the guy. But Even if he is the guy, I would still trust him because, like you said, he's been in the committee. He doesn't have nearly as much tread. He's not a Derrick Henry type guy where he's gotten 350 carries a year for his career. So I definitely like Aaron Jones for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm big on Aaron Jones. For me though, my sixth player I had, who you actually have higher, you have him at 5, is Juju.
Yep.
I think Juju is definitely a polarizing type player right now. I think everybody's on the fence of like, well, if he signs back in Pittsburgh, I mean, is his value really that high now that Claypool's there and Deontay Johnson and James Washington? But yet then there's the lure of him branching out. And I personally picked the Chargers as a good option. I think I mentioned this before that the Chargers are an upcoming offense. I think with Herbert at the helm, they brought in an offensive coordinator and a head coach that are ready to almost air the ball out. They're ready to let Herbert step back there and throw it 30, 40 times a game, I think, personally. And any type of player that lands in the Chargers this year, whether it is Juju or another wide receiver, I think they're big buys. I think whether they add one in the draft or whatnot, any player or offensive player you can get with the Chargers right now, I'm big on. And I think they're a little bit lower still. I think everybody's kind of a little bit mad on them. And I think for me, I'd love to see Juju go in there, play second fiddle to Keenan Allen, and just learn from the true pro that's Keenan Allen. I mean, Keenan Allen is the almost, I wouldn't say the epitome, but he's what you want in a wide receiver one. He's just a hardworking guy. He runs routes well. He just does everything well. And I think Juju getting that, and he's still only 24. And I think just getting that experience at 24 to play beside Keenan Allen would be tremendous for his career, whether it's a 1-year deal and he moves on. I just would love to see him land in a spot like that. And honestly, you had him at 5 and you had him going to Washington. Now, why would you prefer him, say, in Washington over the Chargers?
Well, the Chargers are actually not a horrible spot because of obviously their quarterback and things like that. But I'm kind of when I saw that you had the Chargers, I was kind of curious on if you think he'd fit in that locker room just with his personality. Because with the way Keenan Allen is, like you said, he's the consummate professional. Like you never hear anything bad about Keenan Allen. You never hear him talk poorly or anybody talk poorly about him. And Keenan does play the slot quite a bit. So, and I think Juju has to be in the slot. I don't see him being an outside guy. But
I think that like that Keenan Allen, I think I'm looking at it as an aspect that Keenan Allen he needs that presence almost. Do you know what I'm saying? Like to help him. I think Juju's a little bit too much. Juju's got too much AB in him. Do you know what I'm saying? Like he learned from AB, and AB was at the top of the NFL when Juju was there. And I just think I don't want Juju to lose all of that. I just think that learning from Keenan Allen, because Keenan Allen gets fiery too. And I think the key to being a fiery player is to know when to use it. And I think Keenan Allen can help Juju in that aspect.
Oh yeah. If he could get him to harness like that energy, like stop. And I'm still young myself, and he's definitely way younger than me. He's like 5 years younger than I am. So I don't want to see him stop having fun by any means, but I just wish that he would cut back a little bit and, like you said, learn from Keenan Allen a little bit and just say, hey, like, it's cool if you do all that stuff. It's cool if you want to do TikTok videos and things like that. But when it comes to Sundays and when it comes to game time, like you got to be focused and ready to go and not be focusing on what's going on with the social media until maybe even after the game or something like that. Because I feel like that gets in his head a little bit. Like people loved Juju 2 years ago when he was like 2 or 3 years ago when he was the guy in Pittsburgh, and I'm pretty sure he was on the cover of Madden or something like that. I want to say he was heavily involved with Madden. Maybe he wasn't on the cover, but he was heavily involved with Madden for a while. And so he's a huge market. He has his own like little market. Like he really does have a following on TikTok and all that stuff. And he's a great player. I just wish he did have that mentor that would just kind of help him harness that energy and translate it onto the football field more so than the social media aspect. And I'm not saying he focuses more on social media than football on Sundays, but it leaves a bad taste in people's mouths when they see that. And I just don't know if that new head coaching regimen over there would go for that. That's my only concern with that. If they could get him to harness it, sure, by all means, I'm all for it. Herbert's a great quarterback. He would definitely get him the ball. Herbert's going to throw it enough to get multiple guys involved. So I'd be perfectly fine with that.
Nice. So Washington, why'd you pick Washington?
Strictly because of opportunity for him, and I think he's talented enough to overcome any sort of I don't want to say overcome any sort of QB deficiencies, because obviously last year his ADOT was really low, and he was kind of just catching like 3-yard passes and falling down. But he is super, super talented. So if McLaurin on one side or in the slot, and Juju has to play on the outside from time to time, but mainly in the slot, I think they could become, and with Antonio Gibson there and J.D. McKissic there, I think that would make a pretty formidable offense for them to at least get started.
Yeah, I mean,
their defense is low, so I mean I think their defense is actually pretty set. I think they might add a couple more pieces, but other than that, it's their offense and it's their wide receiving core and their quarterback. That's really all that's stopping them from making a serious playoff push.
Yeah, I mean, you had McLaurin and a guy that I still like, Kelvin Harmon, on the other side, on the outside with Juju in the center. That's kind of a scary thought, honestly.
Yeah.
I think sticking with Juju in my landing spot in the Chargers, my fifth guy is Hunter Henry, and that just goes back to, again, what I said with Juju, is that I think I want him to stay in the Chargers. I think that's his best landing spot. I mean, there's other spots that need tight ends, but for me, Hunter Henry will succeed the best in LA. I know he struggles to finish seasons healthy, but I think that Henry can definitely put up tight end 1 numbers, low end probably. If he stays healthy, he could be a mid-level tight end 1, especially in the Chargers offense. I'm not going to really extend too much on Hunter Henry. I just think that he's one of the bigger names for me in this class, just purely because of what the Chargers offense is going to be and how scarce the tight end position is. And I'm just buying Hunter Henry wherever I can. And then you had Will Fuller at 4, who I had at 10, and I did say that we would elaborate more on him. So I like your landing spot description in our pod notes, wherever Watson is, and I kind of agree with that. But why don't you elaborate on Will Fuller for us a little bit, Ryan?
Yeah, so Will Fuller for me is one of those guys that I actually traded for him in one of my dynasty leagues shortly after the suspension hit, because it was a super cheap buy. I like his talent with Watson, or a big armed quarterback. Like, he has to have somebody that's willing to take chances and throw the ball deep, because he's not a technical route runner. He's not Keenan Allen. He's not any of those guys that are going to be running these great route trees or anything like that. But if you give him a guy like Watson, that's why my sheet literally says wherever Watson is, because they have a great connection. If it's Miami, if it's the Jets, whoever it is, they both teams would have the space to sign him. Carolina looks like they're trying to make a push at Watson too, and I think that would hurt Will Fuller's fantasy outlook a little bit, because of the weapons that they have with Moore and Robbie Anderson still being there, and obviously CMC coming back. But Will Fuller is just one of those guys that he's always up there near the top of ADOT and near the top of receiving yards per catch. So it's just wherever Watson is where I want to see him go, and I think he's just a big play waiting to happen. I personally like him best in best ball, but where I was able to get him at in Dynasty, I wasn't too mad about it at all. So if he's with Watson, it should be the same thing as long as he can stay healthy. Like you said, he does get banged up quite a bit, and I don't think the PED thing is too big of a concern. I think it came out and said that he wasn't taking it knowingly or something like that, which I'm not sure if I believe that or not. But how much that played him staying healthy, I nobody can really say other than him and maybe his doctors. But I agree with you on the health standpoint.
All right, and I think this is going to be one of my more exciting parts of it. I think the top three is the big three for me this year in the free agent class. All wide receivers. I guess outside of, like, say, Dak, I guess we could have probably included him in this. However, I do think he re-signs at Dallas, like you had said too. But for me,
Dak would be one, but I think he gets tagged. So
I think for me, this is the big three, and we have the same three as the top three, a little bit different order and a little bit different landing spots. However, one person we do have a similar landing spot. Number three, we both have the same. We have Kenny Galladay. I like Kenny Galladay's overall athletic talent. However, Kenny Galladay has been known to be a little, I don't know, I guess kind of like a boomer bust kind of guy. Yeah, he's a little bit of a diva, his hips bothering him, you never know. But I think adding Kenny Galladay to, say, the Indianapolis Colts is a perfect landing spot for Kenny Galladay. He will have a young Michael Pittman playing on the opposite side, a young Paris Campbell most likely playing the slot. Galladay will be able to stretch the field, and Galladay going from Stafford to Wentz is pretty good to me. I think Wentz is a pretty good arm when he gets the time to throw, and I think Galladay there, he should command that room as the veteran and should be their wide receiver one and allow Michael Pittman to play on the lesser of corners. And I think for both of them, that would be a great fit personally. However, you were a little different and you went with Baltimore. Now, why would you say Galladay is a better fit in Baltimore than, say, Indy?
Well, I mean, they experimented with Dez at their X spot, and obviously that wasn't going to work. Dez is he's too old now. He's just not the same Dez as he was. So I do think that him with Hollywood and their running game, that would give them somebody that would really open up their play action and really open up the running game. Like everybody knows that Baltimore wants to run, but they wouldn't be able to stack the box and make it 8-9 in the box. He would make defenses be honest. And I do think Lamar is good enough with his arm to attack defenses with Kenny G as long as he stays healthy, because it seems I drafted him last year and redrafted, and I was super excited about it. And it was one of those Joe Mixon type things where it was, he's not going on IR. He's ready to come back in a week or two. And then week comes around and my ankle hurts still, or hip, or whatever the case may be. So I don't know if it was just him not wanting to play for Detroit or if he really had those nagging injuries all season. But if he's healthy and he's focused and he's committed, he's a top 7 wide receiver in the league, just purely based off talent alone. I don't see the Megatron comparison. I really don't. I don't agree with people that say that he's just like a baby Megatron, but he is super, super talented. I just think Calvin Johnson was on a whole different planet from everybody else. But if in Baltimore, like I said, I really think that would open up a lot of things for that offense, especially if they got a true number one receiver like him. It would open up Marquise Brown too, because they wouldn't be able to focus on him nearly as much. It would open up Mark Andrews in the middle of the field. I just think it would just fit almost seamlessly with that offense.
Yeah, my concern is just Lamar. I know he struggled in his career to hit the outside guys, and I mean, it could just be a scheme. It could be him. To me, Baltimore. I'm not going to go with any wide receiver who lands in Baltimore. That's just me. That's a personal thing. I just think Lamar worries me as far as getting that true wide receiver one out of there in production wise. But I mean, you're not wrong. It would definitely open up things, and it would definitely bolster my J.K. Dobbins as RB1 out of that class. It definitely would give that a little bit of a help. Yeah. But number 2, you had Chris Godwin. And I had Chris Godwin as my top free agent, but we both had the same landing spot, which is interesting. We both picked Miami. I think ultimately Tampa Bay will probably tag him and or bring him back. I just personally think he should move on. I think there's, like we had discussed with AB, there's a lot of weapons there. And it's tough to move on, though, from like Tom Brady. I mean, you just want to come off a Super Bowl, and he might get a the Buccaneers may get a discount, and he might sign for a little bit less just because he knows there's a chance they repeat this year with that defense, and if most of those weapons do return. But I think for fantasy value, I think moving on to, say, Miami would be perfect. I know there's been rumors Miami wants to revamp that wide receiver group. And even if they don't, I mean, Devontae Parker's still on the outside. He had a down year last year. However, he still is a formidable wide receiver that they're going to have to account for. And if Godwin can come over and necessarily possibly play the slot, I think he honestly could become their wide receiver one. He could become the Keenan Allen for them that is in the Chargers, or he could become a Crowder for Darnold. You know what I mean? Like, he just has that command of him, and he could return to the form that he was 2 years ago as one of the top dynasty wide receiver prospects. Now, why did you put him, say, in Miami, Ryan?
Well, I like him in Miami a lot because they have the draft capital to go and get somebody like Jamar Chase. And if they grabbed Jamar Chase and had Chase and Parker on the outside with Godwin in the slot, like that, that's unreal. So if that were to happen, that immediately puts them into a top 10 offense in the league, especially if they get a running back maybe in the back half of the first, or in the second round if they got I don't know, even if they kept Gaskin, I'd be perfectly fine with them keeping Gaskin and letting him have the reins there. But I just think he'd be great. Like you said, he's a great route runner. I don't think he's on a Keenan Allen level of route running, because Keenan Allen, I think, is the best route runner in the league. But he definitely would. He would be incredible in that offense. He would give somebody that's always open for Tua. I mean, I'm not a huge Tua guy for personal reasons and for football reasons alone, but I just think that would definitely push their rebuild into that next phase where they have a bona fide offense that teams are going to have to be legit scared of. And I think Brian Flores is doing a great job with their team as a whole. And Godwin did say that he wants to re-sign in Tampa, but he's not willing to take a hometown discount. He wants to get paid, and Miami has the cap space to do it. So best of both worlds for both of them.
Nice. And I had two, and you had one for Allen Robinson. Different landing spots again. I chose the Jets, I think, adding another wide receiver to go along with, say, adding a quarterback in the draft, and he will be able to command that room and take over the wide receiver one. It would hurt Mims, but also help Mims. I just think it would – I don't know if Allen Robinson is going to want to go there. I mean, he's played his whole career on teams that just aren't very good. So I don't know if he's really looking for the money or if he's looking for a spot where he can excel and win. And I think you're going to look at him for like the Jets, the Indianapolis Colts. Those are going to be, I think, just because of the cap space, I think he's still going to demand a decent amount. But you had one that I just mentioned was Indianapolis, and I think that's a good fit. And I think, why don't you elaborate on why you want him in the Colts?
Well, they just need that true number one receiver, and Allen Robinson's he's right up there, man. He's been underappreciated for years now because of playing in Chicago and Jacksonville and playing with Blake Bortles and Trubisky and Foles, and he deserves to have somebody that, I mean, Wentz is a huge upgrade over even those guys. So, and Wentz is probably a middle of the pack quarterback as it is. So it's just one of those things where it's a great landing spot for him because he would be the undisputed number one guy like he has been. So he would be the head of the wide receiver room. He could teach Pittman how to be what a lot of people think that he can be. And it would give Wentz somebody that he can trust in clutch situations or big time moments that he hasn't necessarily had as far as far as I can remember in his career so far. So I think they would make a great duo to team up in Indy, and Frank Reich runs a great offense. Their system's good overall. So, I mean, they made a playoff run with rookie Pittman and an aging Ty and no Paris Campbell. So I think adding somebody like Allen Robinson would be another big step for their playoff hopes as well.
So would we say Indy adds Allen Robinson? Do we say that Carson Wentz is the best quarterback Allen Robinson's ever had?
Oh, easy. I think.
I think that'd be exciting. I mean, I'm with you. I mean, I haven't been hot. I mean, honestly, these top three guys, I kind of had all the same landing spots, and I think depending on what they're asking and what direction the team wants to go, I think whether any of these guys land in Indy, Miami, the Jets, you could even look at teams like, honestly, even Arizona. I mean, Arizona really doesn't have a wide receiver too, truthfully. I mean, they have Kirk and they have other guys. I think you could see maybe one of them falling over there. Honestly, Curtis Samuel, who you mentioned earlier, I think that could be a good fit in Arizona. I think he fits their kind of style offense. But honestly, we're getting close to the hour mark, so we had a couple more segments. I think we're going to just condense them a little bit here, Ryan. But what I wanted to bring up was a couple more so dark horses or like sleeper guys that aren't really getting talked about right now, that are also free agents out of this class. I think we have three wide receivers and a tight end. Ryan, why don't you give me the two guys that you're high on that the rest of the Twitter sphere isn't as high on?
I'm not necessarily super high on them. I think they're guys that I'd be willing to take a dart throw at. One being Nelson Aguilar from Las Vegas now, and Rashad Perryman from the Jets. Both guys super good in deep ball situations. They would have to be guys that are number two, or not even number two, number three receivers in a good offense. But I think with a guy like Aguilar, the way he ended the year, if you would have took his bye week from the bye week on to the rest of the season, he would have finished as high-end wide receiver 3, and he'd actually finish ahead of T. Higgins, who I'm super high on. So I actually just lost my notes, so I'm kind of going off of memory here. But and for Perriman, it was one of those things where I feel like he was a breakout candidate for 2020 going into the season last year when he signed with the Jets, and just never really got it going. He was hindered by injuries a little bit. He only played in 12 games. Bad quarterback play, bad offense in general, really. Adam Gase probably should never see an NFL field again.
He finds a way.
He for sure will, but it should be as like a special teams coordinator. He should never be a head coach again. But Perriman, I liked a lot going into last year, like a lot of people did. Like I said, he was a breakout candidate for 2020 and just never really got going, never really fit into the scheme or anything like that. So
I like the landing spot you picked for him, honestly. I mean, you had him landing in your ideal landing spot was the 49ers, and I kind of like that. I think Perriman, like you had mentioned, he's kind of like a complementary piece, and I think that offense kind of almost, as sad as it sounds, lacks that speed at wide receiver. I mean, Ayuk's pretty speedy. Deebo Samuel's a little bit more physical, but I think that adding a Perriman who can really stretch the field there is actually, I think that could be a pretty good landing spot for him. I don't know how, like you said, I mean, these guys are kind of, that we're mentioning right now, are more of like those late throw, dark throw kind of guys that, I mean, they could turn into something, but most likely aren't. So I could get in that on Perriman at a cheaper price. The two that I picked, I had Keelan Cole and Gerald Everett. And I think for me, I'm going to kind of just go quick over Cole here. I think he had his second 600-yard season again this year. And I think he's just a good complementary piece. I think he's a cheap option for a team like, say, Green Bay or maybe Houston, somebody like that doesn't have a lot of cap space. He's not going to demand a large amount. And I think he showed in his small amount and progress this year that he is still a viable receiver. I mean, necessarily is he going to give you those wide receiver numbers? Most likely not. I think he would be a good depth guy. He's going to be a guy that you could plug in your bye week, or if your wide receiver 3 has a tough matchup. I just think that he's just a solid receiver. But the guy I'm more excited on is Gerald Everett. To me, Gerald Everett came out of college. He's a super athletic tight end. I think he just had to split time with the Rams, with Higbee, and just that whole offense. He just never really got that chance. I mean, he has 61 career games. He only got 11 games that he got to start in. And over those career games, I mean, he's produced 1,300 yards in the 61 games, which isn't terrible for a tight end. But, I mean, I think the big thing that sticks out is his numbers. I mean, he had a 93rd percentile burst score coming out of college. He had a 91st percentile dominator rating coming out of college. And he had an 86th percentile SMART score. I mean, this guy he's an athletic tight end. He reminds me a lot of like a Jonnu Smith, just a very athletic built tight end. And I think if he could land in a spot like, say, Arizona, or even where I said Jonnu Smith in New Orleans, just a spot that has a clear vacancy at tight end that he could be used as that pass catching tight end and just get a shot to show what he has. I think he could excel in a tight end market that's fairly bleak after the top 4. I'm pretty excited, honestly. I feel like I'm going to try and get a couple Gerald Everett shares, whether it's redraft or fantasy this year. I just think he could be a guy that you could maybe get for a 3rd or even a 4th round pick, honestly, depending on how the person feels about him. And he could pay off for you. I mean,
the thing with Everett is I feel like people are kind of getting onto the same boat as you are, because I know my one startup was a tight end premium league, and he went inside the top 15 tight ends. So I mean, it's not
as sneaky as I thought he did.
That's not as high as he could be. I think he could be a top, and that's not including rookies that are rookie draft later on. So guys like Freiermuth and Brevin Jordan and Kyle Pitts obviously weren't involved in that, but I think at tight end 15 for a backup tight end, I mean, for a career backup tight end, I mean, people are starting to wise up to him a little bit because he is an athletic freak. Like you said, his profile looks out great. I mean, he from an athletic standpoint, he's what you want in a tight end. So like you said, if somebody like Arizona wanted to go the free agent route to fill their tight end spot as opposed to drafting somebody, or you leave Adam Trautman alone. So I'm not even going to say New Orleans.
I know I'm a big Adam Trautman guy, but
somebody, I'm trying to think of another team.
I mean, the Jets, you could say, need a tight end. I mean, they still have Herndon, but
yeah, the Jets would be a good spot with Fields or Wilson or whoever, Deshaun or whoever they decide to bring in. I'm still a Herndon believer for whatever reason. I'm still stuck on him. I don't know why.
Me too. I got him in a couple places.
He's been hurt or underperformed, but it seems like every time he gets on the field and he gets an opportunity, he plays well. So I can't just. He's just one of those guys that I haven't been able to let go of yet. So if he could go there and even be if he beats out Herndon, then it's whatever. I'll finally be able to cut ties with him. So
yeah, true. All right, I think that wraps it up today. I just want to say before we sign off here, Ryan, why don't you let the people who joined us late let them know where they can find you on Twitter.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Mackey_FFB. You can hopefully see some stuff on yards per coming up here shortly. Don't forget to download the yards per app. I know Jeremy's got a lot of invest into that, and a lot of great work going on over there. Matt Flowers did a lot of great work on the team reviews and things like that. So make sure you guys go check that out.
Yeah, definitely. There's going to be something I was going to mention here. You can find me at Popes FFH on Twitter. Also, like Ryan said, I mean, download the Yards Per app. It's not that we're an affiliate with them because we are, but either way, I mean, it's just a good app. I plugged them in the P2W podcast earlier. That there's a lot of work going on at the Yards Per site right now, and it's some really good stuff. And that's not me being part of it. It's just Matt Flowers, like you said, put together a real good, and all the other guys included that put together the team profiles pages. It's crazy. There's a lot of information in there, and it's just a good site to have. And the app's pretty clutch. We got a lot of rookie profiles about to drop here in the next month. We're gonna have a nice rookie guide coming out with. It's gonna be pretty cool. I know a lot of us are working on that, and then other than that, I mean, it's just a lot of work's going in over there, and there's a lot of big things coming aside from us. And that app's just clutch. I mean, I know there's been a lot of good reviews on it. So
there's definitely the one secret that we can't let out yet that I want to let out so bad that they've been trying to work on that we were talking about in the chat.
Yeah, that's top secret. That's a need to know basis, and the only people who need to know is us too. So, but either way, thanks for joining us. Like I said, all you guys that tuned in live with us on Periscope and YouTube, and anybody listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other platform, we appreciate it. Have a good night, guys.
Night.